WP-Get Web Dev Tutorials for all user levels. Alright, so today I just wanted to quickly talk about layering of code, techniques that you learn over time, and creating your library of skills that you can use to do things. What's prompted this video is I'm just starting to work on a starter site based on the Flex Containers in Elementor. So the way I generally work is I have a starter site for my clients that's got my standard settings, a bunch of preset stuff in there, and I clone that site out as a starting point for any new sites that I work on. Now I'm being very optimistic at this point that the Elementor Flexbox containers are going to come in the not too distant future, hopefully one day before I retire. But anyway, so I want to have a starter site ready to go when that happens. So that's what I'm working on here. And what I wanted to happen is an example down here where I've got a form on the page which uses some standards. So I've got some stuff here for marking, required fields, etc. And I have a bit of code which focuses the first input on a form. I've got YouTube videos on this. I'll link to those in the description here. But what I realise is if I set the focus on this form to the first name, I'm just going to refresh this page. Straight away, because the focus is on the form, the page leaps down to that form input and centres it on the screen. So I'll just go up here again. So if I press F5, again, it goes to the centre of the screen. So I don't want that. What I want to happen is that when they go to this page, they see the top part of the page. When you get down to the form, it focuses on that first input. So I'm thinking, how can I do that? Well, what I ended up doing is, I'm just going to take that focus out there. What I ended up doing is a couple of things here, and it's using existing code that's in my other videos. So I'm going to go back to this form here. So there's the form. I've got an ID on the form of test-form, and I've just got my highlight required class, which gives me these little borders next to the left of these boxes, and there's attributes I can set to override those colors, all that sort of stuff. I'm not going to go into that particular class right now, but that's just an element that I use on these forms. And what I want to do is, instead of having it so that it focuses this input as soon as you load the page, I want to focus that input when the form actually comes into view. So let's have a look how I'm going to do that. So what I'm going to use is my VPA track. Okay, now that's again in another video. I'm going to just drag this screen across. So I've got some a code that I've called Animate in Viewport. Again, this is in a previous video, and all I'm doing is adding my VPA track class. So I'm going to track this in the viewport. All right, so that's all I've done there. Just added my VPA track. And then in the attributes, this is part of that code. So I'm just going to zoom in a bit here so you can see this. In the attributes, I've added a data-event-prefix pipe contact form. So this is the event prefix that I want. Again, that's in another video. So what that's going to do, it's going to fire a JavaScript event with this prefix when this form comes within 20% of the top or the bottom of the viewport. So then I go down to my JavaScript, and in my JavaScript, I'm adding an event listening for that event prefix that I just defined, underscore track view in, and then I'm calling my focus first input method, passing in the ID of the form, which is test form, and setting my timeout as 0. So I'll put a timeout on this function so that when you're adding this to pop-ups, etc., sometimes there's a render delay, and if you don't put a timeout on there, the element doesn't exist when the JavaScript runs. So you put a timeout of say 200 milliseconds. It gives it time to put the input on the screen, and then it focuses on it. So that's what that's all about. Again, that's in another video, and I'll link to that. So point being, all I've done here is standard form. I've added a ID to the form. I've added my VPA track to track that. I've then added a attribute to tell it what the prefix is, the JavaScript prefix, and I've created some code to wait for that event to throw before telling it to focus the input. Let's see what the impact of that is. So if I go back to this page now, and I do a Control F5, it didn't go to the bottom of the page. Do it again. Control F5, didn't go to the bottom. Watch what happens when the form comes into view. There we go, focused on the first input. Let's go to the second input. I go out of view, come into view, and I'm focused on the first input. So this little bit of script here is what it's telling it to focus on the input only when that element, which is the form, comes within the viewport, by default 20% from the top or the bottom. So that solves the problem, and I think that's a really neat way to focus your input. So if I do a Control F5, straight away it's focused because that's within 20% of the bottom of the screen. If I go up to the top here, actually I don't have enough to scroll. If I do an F5 here, it doesn't jump. Go down the screen, there's nothing there. As soon as the form comes into view, it goes to the first input. So this is a really good example of taking code and overlaying and lapping it together. So in my examples here, I'm using my JavaScript animate and viewport code, and all I'm using from that is the VPA track and the, where is my, let's hide that, and my event prefix. That's all I'm setting in there, and that code works. All right. I'm not using any of the animations, so I can if I wanted to. Actually, let's do that. Let's just add a slide fade. I'm just going to add a slide fade to that. So I'm going to come back to my form, and I'm going to add on this form, I'm going to add the class for VPA track and VPA slide fade. Now let's have a look what it does. If I do a F5, and you watch the form, see it slides in and up. Slides out, slides in and up. So all I had to do was add this extra class. I can then now override attributes for how long it slides for, how far it slides for, whether it's sliding X or Y, just by overriding attributes. Again, that's in another video. But this is a cool thing. I've basically created some classes to highlight required fields. I've created a viewport tracking function which I'm using, and I've created some animations which I'm using, and just by mixing those together I'm able to get this effect here. So it's all a good learning curve. As we go, we learn more and we apply them, and I think it's great to come up with these standards and learn as we go. So I'm pretty excited about this, so hopefully that is something that excites you, and if it is, have a look at the previous videos that I'm going to link in the description here, which has all of the code, all the descriptions of what I've used here, and I hope that is something that's going to be useful to you. If it is, please subscribe, please like this so I can get some credit for this and do more of this type of thing. Thank you.